Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you are having a great week so far. I know the Braves' performance on the field has not been that great going into this week, but we've got some really exciting news to talk about. The news that so many of us have been waiting for. It seems like every year, as my podcast partner Stephen Tolbert is with me, it seems like every year, right around the Memorial Day holiday, the Braves kind of stumble, kind of limp through the first few months. And right now they're struggling once again. But something happens around Memorial Day that has really helped this team take off in previous years, whether it's Michael Harris II and Spencer Strider coming on strong a few years ago, whether it's the offense really taking off like it did in 2023. But this time around, it may be the best remedy of all, Stephen, and that is the return of our MVP. It's happening Friday night, the return of one Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yeah, what's up, buddy? Yeah, that's the biggest news of the night. I mean, I know the game happened, and we're going to talk about the game. The game's going to be the second segment of the show. I know a lot of people are annoyed, but when, the last time we saw this guy on the field for a full season, he was the unanimous MVP. And so when he is back, when he is coming back to the lineup, that's the headline. And it was announced today. The team, started leaking out around 4:00. The media was talking to Snit, and he kind of gave a pretty eye-opening answer. He said he'll be back sooner rather than later. And then within 20, 30 minutes, it was confirmed that he was coming back tomorrow. The team has already announced it on Twitter. He's in the lineup. He'll be in the lineup tomorrow night against the Padres. I mean, the Braves need him. The Braves need him. The Braves need him to be back to being Ronald Acuna Jr. They need their leadoff hitter back. Ever since Alex Verdugo kind of fell off a couple of weeks ago, that leadoff spot has been a little bit of a black hole. Quite honestly, the outfield as a whole has been a little bit of a black hole since Verdugo and Eli White have both kind of come back down to earth. Michael Harris still hasn't gotten it going. The Braves need Ronald to be good. And it sucks to have to put so much pressure on a guy who's coming back from his second torn ACL, but it is what it is. And, I don't know if this was always the plan. I don't know if they were always going to have him just play one time in the minors, 9 innings. The first time he played 9 innings was on Wednesday. The original plan was try to have him do that a few times and then call him up. Well, they scrapped that idea. They scratched him from the Gwinnett lineup tonight and just said, go ahead and get to Atlanta. So I don't know if that's because of how the team's playing or Ronald just looks that good, but he's coming home. He's coming back to the lineup. Biggest news of the night, maybe the biggest news of the year, quite honestly, other than when Strider came back. And so now we're going to get to do this thing where we see how he looks, kind of like with Strider. How does he look? What do they get? What kind of version of Ronald are we going to get? All those questions will be answered, but just on the face of it, at 30,000 feet, getting the MVP back, the Braves need him, and I can't wait. I can't wait for tomorrow night.
And I think that there's some things to keep in mind. We've highlighted the different ways in which Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to help this team. Out of the leadoff spot, his ability to get on base, obviously his power, so on and so forth. But there's 3 other things real quickly that I think need to be realized about just the impact that Ronald Acuna Jr. makes. We talk about what he's going to look like when he gets back. Well, if Ronald Acuna Jr. isn't fully Ronald Acuna Jr., that's fine. I think that people should expect that more than him getting back to the MVP level. But even if he's not fully back to that level, and he may not get there this year, he still is a top 20, top 25 player in the game. And he's one of the rare guys that can help out in so many different areas. You just don't get too many of those guys in the game at any one time, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is one of those guys. If he is back to being fully himself at some time this year, you talk about your Aaron Judge, your Shohei Ohtani, your Juan Soto, so on and so forth. Ronald Acuna Jr. may not be the best overall round player in the game, but he clearly is in the conversation to be top 5. That is a huge asset to put back on this Braves squad. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we talk about all the stuff that he can do on the field. Well, there also should be mentioned Ronald Acuna Jr. is just a source of fun. He is a source of enjoyment. When he plays the game is that much more fun. Not only for him, but for his teammates, the coaching staff, the fans. I know that there have been moments in the past that have led to frustration, what have you. But the point is that when Ronald Acuna Jr. is healthy and playing well, this team has a different aura about it. You've talked about the alphas being back in that clubhouse, and with how much we've lost from our clubhouse presence over the past 6 to 12 months, having a healthy Ronald Acuna Jr. back is going to help out so much. And the third thing is this: Ronald Acuna Jr. is not going to bring with him all the answers to the many questions that this team has right now. But what he is going to do is he's going to allow for a little bit to be taken off the plate of an Austin Riley or a Matt Olson or others as well. Him at the top of the order is going to help everybody move down just a little bit, get a bit more comfortable with where they're going to be in the lineup. Whenever something does not work out our way, we still have Ronald coming to the plate more than anybody else. That is a way to answer some of the things where we're struggling. So the point that I'm getting at is that, again, I'm not saying no Chipper came out and said that all of a sudden he feels that we're going to take off. But having Ronald Acuna Jr. back, it may not necessarily happen that quickly, but it puts us in a much better position to have that happen. And that's why it's so exciting to know he's coming through that door tomorrow.
Yeah, and listen, a couple of things. So I've said this before on the show. Even when Ronald was bad in 2022, when he came back from the first ACL, he still ran an on-base percentage in the 350s. And he did the same thing last year in 20. I know he only played a month and a half in 24, but he still ran an OBP in the 350s. So like even the bad version of Acuna at the top of the lineup is valuable because he gets on base so much. And just out of a pure leadoff, conversation, just that alone is valuable. He just gets on base a ton. Now we don't know what he's going to look like on the bases. Scott made a good point the other night on their show. I thought, when he came back in 22, he actually ran more than he did before he left. So I don't actually know what's going to happen. The conventional wisdom is he's not going to run a lot, but we've gone through this before and he came back and he ran more than ever. So I have no idea. I don't think anybody knows. I'm not sure the Braves know, quite honestly. It's hard. The thing with Acuna is once you put him on the field, like, if he's standing on first base and he feels good, he's going to run. That's just how he plays. So I don't know how much you can even control it, quite honestly. You can tell him not to, but I don't know. I don't know how much he's going to run. I don't know how dynamic he's going to be. I'm pretty confident that he's going to hit well. I don't think he's going to be great in the outfield. I think that's going to be the last part that comes. I'm pretty confident he's going to hit very well. I have no idea what to expect on the bases, but all I know is I'm ready to see. I'm ready to find out exactly, because you're right. Like, without him, this team lacks a certain level of excitement when you watch them. One reason is they don't have a ton of just like breathtaking athleticism or speed, or there's not really like a really exciting player to watch on the team right now. Michael Harris is the closest when he's playing defense, and his defense is spectacular to watch. But other than that, there's really not like a true spectacle when you watch the Braves when Acuna is not out there, and he is that for this team. And so you're right. He does bring a level of just enjoyment to watch that you kind of miss without him. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, I'm trying to keep my expectations in check because he's coming back from a second torn ACL. I think he's going to be awesome. And man, does this team need it? And we're going to talk about this game in a second, but they need a spark. And there is no better spark than having an MVP level player sitting at the top of your lineup.
Since Ronald Acuna Jr. went down in that Pittsburgh game, since May 21st of last year, the Braves from their leadoff spot have had a 299 on base percentage and a 94 WRC plus, both bottom 5 among MLB leadoff spots in that time era, basically over the past year plus. That's how much we've struggled. So again, when you talk about the spark, it's going to certainly be great to see Ronald Acuna Jr. being that spark that hopefully will fuel the flames of victory for us moving forward. But before we get to that, we will break down the struggles of the Braves because they are important as they continue to unfortunately be a part of the story so far this season. We'll discuss the latest loss to the Nationals here in just a moment after a word from our partners.
FT fam, let's talk about the HOF app. If you're into parlays, but sometimes you're missing the mark more than you would like to, can I introduce you to some serious analytics on an app that is easy to read and comprehend? And I'm sitting next to a man who knows how to place a parlay.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is breaking down a parlay with this Hall of Fame app. There's the situations that you'll find easier to do. It's very helpful and understanding. And if you like, gambling, sometimes this is really good to know. So get on there, get on that Hall of Fame app and check it out.
Yeah, this is info that will help you, okay? With a 4.9 rating in the App Store and over 6,000 five-star reviews, safe to say that HOF has already helped a lot of people bet smarter. For a limited time only, FT listeners can get a 7-day free trial and 50% off their first month when they use code FOUL at checkout. Download the HOF app on iOS or Android. Enter code FOUL and you're all set.
So, Stephen, of course, tonight, before we get into the excitement of the weekend with Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back, us playing, against, fellow playoff hopeful in the San Diego Padres. The unfortunate thing is that the momentum that the Braves had from, being one game above 500 and winning that series on the road in Boston, it basically got wiped away. This team simply cannot get out of its own way. I know that I've alluded to alliteration in the past, but it literally feels like it happens one day, you rinse, wash, repeat. It's a different day, but the same story. This team cannot have all aspects of the team that you need to win on the same page consistently. It's just so rare for them to be able to do that. And that, of course, is what happened again on Thursday night. The Braves offense did very well. Back-to-back home runs from Matt Olson and Ronald Acuna Jr., Marcell Ozuna to start the game. But as soon as that happens, what happens? A.J. Smith-Shawver hits the regression button. Unfortunately, the Nationals come out, get out to a 5-2 lead. The Braves work their way back. They come back from down 7-5. It looks like that we're going to be in a position to win, but unfortunately, the Lady Magic was not there. But I think what it comes down to is that just as soon as our offense gets going, our pitching starts to struggle. It's unfortunate to see. And until that changes, this team, who now is playing 500 balls since April 29th, once again, this team is going to continue to be at 500, and it's going to be hard to dig out of the hole that it needs to truly win at the rate that it needs to.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. I kind of gave the analogy to my golf game where, you just can't get everything going at once. If you got the irons going, you can't get the driver going. And the Braves have just lived that way all year. I mean, just night to night. If the starting pitching is good, the offense is bad. If the starting pitching is bad, then the offense is good. If both are good, then the bullpen struggles. Just stacking all three phases of the game together consistently has just not happened at all. And, that kind of leads to around a 500 record, right? At times the offense has been really good. At times the offense has really stunk. At times the pitching has been really good. At times the pitching has stunk. A.J. Smith-Shawver was not good tonight. He gave up 7 runs in 3 innings. He had 1 strikeout total. He was not missing many bats. The Nationals were hitting balls very hard. It was not a lot of bloop hits. Those were legitimate hits. And the bullpen came in and I don't think the bullpen gave up a run. Until the ghost runner at the end, which doesn't count as an earned run. AJ gave up 7 and the bullpen held it there for the next 6 innings and gave the offense a chance. And the offense, credit to the offense did cover up those 7 runs. They got it all the way back. We're going to talk about in a second this third base coach stuff. We're going to talk about that in a second, but we're going to stick with AJ for a second. AJ was probably due some regression. I don't think AJ Smith-Shawver at this point in his career is a 2 ERA pitcher, which is what he was pitching at for the last few weeks. So this was coming probably at some point. It sucks that it all happened at once. 7 earned runs. If your starting pitcher gives up 7 earned runs in 3 innings, you're probably going to lose that game. Even with a good offense, those aren't games you win. So the fact that the Braves even got this to extra innings shows how well the bullpen and the offense did today. But again, there's this triangle of offense, starting pitching, bullpen, and the Braves is just 2 out of 3. And it's the one that's off is the one that cost you the game that night. And it's just a really frustrating way to go through a season. And I don't have an explanation for it. I guarantee you the team doesn't have an explanation for it, but they just cannot get all three phases going at once that will lead to any sort of momentum. And tonight it was AJ Smith-Shawver who was due some regression, got hit with some regression, and it cost the game. It cost the Braves the game.
Well, there's another added aspect as well. That's nuance. That's value added from the coaching staff. And we've seen it time and time again. That has not been at the level that it needs to for this Brave squad this year. There just have been unfortunate instances where in the moment, common sense needs to apply, whether it's Brian Sticker's handling of the bullpen, potentially who he puts at the plate in a big moment, what have you. There's been moments this year where he's made some decisions that leave you scratching your head. Well, tonight, I believe it's Matt Tuiasosopo. I know there's a couple of Tuiasosopos. Matt Tuiasosopo, the Braves' third base coach. If you did not watch the game, it was the bottom of the ninth inning. The Braves had the Braves had runners on first and second, and Matt Olson hit a double. And so not Stuart Fairchild, I believe it was Eli White or Nick Allen that was on. I forget.
It was Stuart Fairchild.
Yeah, well, no, it was Luke Williams.
Luke
Shawn
Williams, yeah.
John Murphy hit the single, so Luke Williams was the pinch runner.
Yeah.
Stuart Fairchild did not get on. He failed to do the sacrifice bunt. Riley got a single. Olson hit the double. So your best guys, your big guys, we talk about the best Braves needing to be at their best. They put the Braves in a position to not only tie the game, but potentially go ahead. So Matt Olson hits the double. And then, of course, Luke Williams scores. But it was so obvious to hold Austin Riley. And if you did that, you would have had Riley on third, Matt Olson on second, with Marcell Ozuna at the plate. The score tied 7-7 in the top of the ninth with one out. You were in a position to where odds, which had not been in your favor the whole game, they were finally in your grasp to win the game. But unfortunately, Austin Riley was sitting home when it did not make any sense to do so. And unfortunately, that led to two outs, and then Marcell Ozuna popped out, and we lost the game. The thing that I'm getting at is, Stephen, is that when we talk about the Braves are struggling, they're so inconsistent at getting every part of their game on the same page to win at the level that they need to. It does us no favors when the coaching staff cannot make the obvious decisions to give us a chance. That has to change.
Yeah, this one pissed me off, quite honestly. Because it happened a couple of days ago too, where Austin Riley got sent in just an absurd.
Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt, but Tuiasosopo, he has, if there's the analogy, Brian Snitker's struggles with managing the bullpen is the same when it comes to Tuiasosopo's inability to realize when not to send the runner. This has happened 5 to 7 times over the past year. It's quite frustrating.
Yeah, it was in Boston. It was Verdugo. Somebody hit a sharp single to left field. Boston, Fenway Park's left field is the shortest left field in baseball because of the Green Monster. So the left fielder plays at like 220 feet. Somebody hit a sharp line drive. I think it was Matt Olson again, actually. Matt Olson hit a sharp line drive to Jared Duran in left field. And Tuiasosopo sent Verdugo. I mean, Duran was throwing the ball to home before Verdugo even got to third base, and Verdugo was out by 12 miles. And that was like 2 or 3 days ago. So you have that fresh in your mind. Tonight's was even worse because Matt Olson hits this absolute rock. By the way, Matt Olson is on fire all of a sudden. He hit another home run tonight at a double. I think he's up to like a 135 WRC plus for the season. Like he's starting to look like Matt Olson again. But Matt Olson hits this absolute rocket of a double. I think it's a one hop off the wall. The right fielder played it really well, got the ball in very quick. Austin Riley has absolutely no business being sent there. First of all, they're lucky Austin didn't get hurt because it was one of those close plays at the plate where the dude has to dive at the plate. You got the catcher and all of his, stormtrooper gear coming down on the runner. Like, that's how a dude breaks a hand or breaks a wrist. Aside from the fact that it's probably going to lose you the game, it's just stupid to do it in the first place. But what makes it even dumber is that you have Marcell Ozuna coming up. And even if they walk Marcell Ozuna with a runner on second and third, you have Drake Baldwin behind him. Like, you have the guys that you want at the plate. If they walk Marcell, then you got the bases loaded, one out with Drake Baldwin up in a tie game. You take that all day long. You gladly take that. That's like the worst case scenario if they decide to take the bat out of Azuna's hands, who Azuna had a really good night tonight as well. He had 3-hit night. It's just senseless, absolutely senseless. And being a third base coach is tough. I understand it's tough, but like these are no brainers. Like the Verdugo one is just mind-numbingly stupid, and this one might have been worse. You have to know who's on deck, and you have to know who's in the hole. It's your best two. It's maybe the two guys you want at the plate the most. Honestly, the way the season has gone with Ozuna and Baltimore, probably the two best hitters you've had on the team all year are those two guys, and that's who's up next. And they would have been up with you, tied the game, 1 out, and either runners on second or third or bases loaded. It just pissed me off. I'm still pissed off, quite honestly. I'm glad the Acuna news came, because if we had to lead this show with this segment, I would have popped a blood vessel. It just pisses me off. It's just like, if it's a close play, if it's like 50-50, I could see it. But he's had 2 in like the last 3 or 4 days that have just been mind-numbingly stupid. And it's cost the Braves big both times, and it can't happen.
Being aggressive is fine. And, and Brian Snicker at times when he's been aggressive, I've been a fan of it. Over the years, we've been aggressive sending runners to third. And a lot of times it's worked out. I've been a fan of it. But again, when you're in a situation where you've not had odds in your favor for much of the game, and you all of a sudden are in a position where that can change, and you've got your best hitters, some of your best hitters coming to the plate, you've got to play those odds. And that's the value that you have to have from your third base coach and your coaching staff, especially when overall you've been struggling. And
I'll make this point. Listen, if that's Eli White running around and he's like one of the fastest dudes in baseball, and you're like, all right, I'm going to make Washington make 2 perfect throws to get him out. If that was the case, I would actually understand it. And same with the Verdugo play a couple of days ago in Boston. If that was Eli White or Stuart Fairchild, somebody who can absolutely fly, and the dude has to make a perfect throw to get you out, okay, that's aggressive. That's forcing the other team to be perfect to get an out. This is not that. This was Alex Verdugo running and Austin Riley running. Neither Boston nor Washington had to be perfect to get this out. They just had to not screw it up. And any sort of decent throw gets either guy. And that's what pisses me off. It's not even really close.
Yeah. And that's the thing about it, is that you whenever you have the chance, again, to put yourself in a position to win, you've got to make the right decisions to be able to do that. Because I also want to hit on this point before we get into the San Diego Padres series. The Braves over the past 3 weeks have failed. And what I mean by have failed is that over the past 3 weeks now, this Braves team is 1 game under 500. After they won that second game in Colorado, they were 1 game under 500. They then lost the next game 2-1. Well, now 3 weeks later, they're 1 game under 500, and includes disappointing series against the Nationals and includes disappointing series against the Pirates. This 3-week stretch was supposed to be an opportunity for them to gain even more traction from their slow start to the season. Again, I know that overall it's good to see how much they've improved record-wise, but there's a good chance we'd look back and say, we had missed opportunities during the stretch of the season, because you're now about to get into a 3-week stretch where you're playing nothing besides another series with Boston. You're playing nothing but National League playoff hopefuls or current National League playoff teams. That is what is disappointing. For instance, since the start of last year, we're 8-11 against the Nationals. The Braves last year struggled against teams that they were clearly better than, and that once again has shown up this season, and it's really prevented us from taking advantage of a golden opportunity that now forces us to continue to win series, and probably win more than some may expect us to. We've got to do it over the next 3 or 4 weeks because of the fact we couldn't take advantage of this stretch of the schedule.
Yeah, listen, they played 12 games against the Rockies, the Pirates, and the Nationals, which are all 3 of the worst teams in the National League. None of those are going to be playoff teams. So they've played 12 games against those 3 teams, and they went 6-6. That's tough. That's this part of the schedule. And we talked about it a lot, where they probably needed to make some hay. Now, they did have a good series against the Red Sox. They did have a good series against the Reds. But, if you take care of business against these bad teams and maybe even have go, I mean, you don't want to, you're not going to go 10-2, but if you go 9-3, 8-4 at the worst, you're in a much better spot. But 6-6 against 3 of the worst teams in the National League. Now, I think the Nationals have upside. The Nationals have upside that the Rockies and Pirates don't, because the Nationals have some really good young position players that are legit. Like James Woods is a legitimate, probably going to be an MVP candidate at some point in his career type of hitter. I think he's running like a 950 OPS right now. So he's no joke. They got, CJ Abrams, another guy is good. Ruiz always hits the Braves well. Dylan Cruz, if you're a National, this is not a Nationals podcast, but if it was, you can see a glimmer of hope coming with some of these drafts and some of these prospects they have. But as we sit here today, the Nationals are going to lose probably.
I was also going to say, don't forget, they got the number 1 pick in this year's draft with all day on the board for them. So, yeah.
But in 2025, they're probably going to lose 85 plus games. They're not a good team this year. To be 3-3 against them is not great. And to be 8-11 the last 2 years against them is certainly not good. So yeah, it's a bummer. And it's why the Braves have been stuck in mud the last 3 weeks. And this is what we talked about on the last show. The Braves are not the hottest team in baseball. I know since April 18th or whatever, they have the best record, but a lot of that is just accounting for how hot they were at the end of April. In the month of May, the Braves are, I think, under 500, right at 500 or under 500. So they've been stuck in mud for a few weeks now. And, it kind of stinks against a pretty easy part of the schedule. And now that goes away. The schedule, we're about to talk about San Diego. That's their next opponent. The schedule picks up in June, and it's going to be a lot harder.
Absolutely. And you have 2 teams that clearly have the playoffs in mind, and even more in mind right now, that are struggling as they meet this weekend in Atlanta. But there's going to be very little room for error when it comes to the Braves. We'll have more on that after another word from our partners.
I just want to say, before Arena Club, if you were trying to very actively buy, sell, trade, it was very complicated and used a lot of mail that was unnecessary.
Yeah, I didn't even know how to do it. But I'm glad we have Arena Club now, because it's a one-stop shop for everything card-related.
It is. And right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or your first card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FOUL. Use code FOUL. If you're a collector, you've got to check out Arena Club. Go get after it.
So, Stephen, the stage is set. Ronald Acuna Jr. is returning to the lineup. He will be in the lineup, returning for the first time in more than a year against the San Diego Padres. And of course, this is going to be the first time that the Braves meet the Padres since they were swept by San Diego in San Diego. In San Diego, I'll have a bit more information on this in just a moment. San Diego, we talk about the Nationals have kind of been, a tough opponent for the Braves. San Diego has been a very tough opponent for the Braves in recent years. Of course, last year they eliminated us for the playoffs. But when I said before the break, we had very little room for error, the big reason why is because just like we faced in San Diego, we once again are going to be facing a very, very tough stretch of pitching. Right now, the starters that are listed for the series are going to be Chris Sale versus Nick Pivetta on Friday, Grant Holmes versus Michael King on Saturday, and then Dylan Cease versus Spencer Swellenbach on Sunday. Now, I will say, I don't think that either starting or the stretch of starting pitching for either team is just heads above the other. But I do think you could say that in Saturday and Sunday's game, you could easily see the Padres being favored when it comes to the starting pitching, which points me to Friday night, Stephen, how important it is to get that win. Because if the Braves don't win that Sale versus Pivetta matchup, and Pivetta has been in an all-star level this year, if they don't get the win tomorrow night, they're now staring at the fact that they've lost 3 straight games with their next 2 games against Michael King and Dylan Cease. You don't want to be in that scenario.
Yeah, Nick Pivetta has been awesome for the Padres this year, and Michael King has been awesome for the last 2 years. Dylan Cease, I think, is having an up and down year, but I swear Dylan Cease throws his best games against the Braves, at least the last couple of years. And yeah, that's not going to be easy. And you're right. when you get to Grant Holmes versus Michael King on Saturday, you're almost certainly not going to be favored in that game. Schwellenbach versus Cease is probably a coin flip, but your best chance is certainly Sale versus Pivetta on Friday. I know Pivetta's had a good season, but just on the whole of the two, you would certainly take Sale in that matchup. The Braves are at home. Acuña's back. Like you said, the Braves do not play well against the Padres. At least they don't. They've actually played decently well in San Diego, last year's playoffs aside. But like San Diego has come to Atlanta and kicked the crap out of the Braves the last couple of years. So they have never been able to get Manny Machado or Fernando Tatis Jr. out. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I guarantee you both those guys have like 900 or plus OPSs against the Braves. So it's not going to be easy. And nothing about this next stretch is going to be easy. This is why you kind of wanted to take more advantage of this stretch than the Braves did end up doing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Acuna coming back is obviously going to be the headline. That's what everybody's going to be talking about. I'm guessing, I'm almost certain he's going to be batting leadoff. It'll be an absolute circus around, it's a Chris Sale Friday night game anyway. So the stadium was already going to be packed, but now that Acuna's coming back, it's going to be like a Taylor Swift concert. There's going to be just as many people outside the stadium as there is inside. It's going to be a party at Truist. And so that will at least help take the sting out of this bad road trip where the Braves started off well, but then, wet the bed here in Washington, D.C. But they need to get back on the horse, and having your superstar back will help a lot. But yeah, the pitching matchups outside of Friday night probably don't favor you. You definitely need to win Friday night. And if you win Friday, you can steal one, win the series, and then you're kind of back on the right side of things and hopefully get on a run at some point.
Yeah, over the past 2 years, the Braves now are 6-12 against the Padres. That includes 2-6 when the Padres come to Atlanta. So certainly a trend that the Braves want to change. So what stands out in this series for the Braves? Where are they going to find the advantage? I feel like with Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back, it's the offense. The Braves overall, they're starting. Let's not let one positive takeaway. We talked about in May that the power has really seemed like it's disappeared. But over the past week, since the weekend, that power has started to come back. Matt Olson getting hot is a big reason why. Marcell Ozuna is starting to put together some really good at-bats as well. His power is starting to come back. And then, of course, again, you add Acuna. The Braves offense, for the Braves to win this series, the Braves offense has to clearly be better than the Padres. I think that you could make the case that they are on paper with Acuna back, but you also could say this year that hasn't necessarily been the case. The Braves are going to once again have to rely on their offense in this series. I think they can get it done, especially if they can score early, but they've got to get it done. That's the other thing that I think that doesn't stand out enough when we talk about this Braves team. We are now at the third of the way through the season. We're at Memorial Day. Again, going through a stretch where we're going to face nothing but NL playoff teams. You've got to get the series win this weekend, because if you don't, you start getting back in that hole that you were again at the first of the year with far less time to be able to get out of it.
And let me say this, and we can spin this into a conversation about the bench if you want to, but so the conversation has been who's going to go down when Acuna comes up tomorrow, right? And the assumption has just been Stuart Fairchild or Luke Williams. Luke Williams being optioned is I actually don't know if Luke Williams has options. I have to go back and look. But, who's going to get sent down when Acuna comes back up? And a more interesting conversation to me is who's going to play left field when Acuna is here. Because obviously Acuna is going to play right. Michael Harris is going to play in center. And because the Padres are throwing 3 consecutive righties, Pivetta, King, and Cease are all right-handed, conventional wisdom might say that Verdugo should play in this series. I am going to make the argument that Eli White should play. One, because Eli White actually hits better against right-handed pitching than he does against left-handed pitching, but that's not why. That's a pretty weak argument. Reverse splits are always kind of a fluky thing anyways. My number one argument for why Eli White should play left field most of the time this season until Profar gets back is if you play Eli White in left field, then Michael Harris can shade towards right field and give Acuna help where Acuna doesn't have to go deep into, because Eli White is a center fielder, basically. And if you put a center fielder in left field and a center fielder in right field or in center field, you have two really good defensive fielders in the two biggest parts of Truist Park, which are left field and right and center field. Then Michael Harris can shade towards Acuna and right and limit some of his. I said this before. I think he's going to be a little bit of a liability out there at the start. I think that's going to be the weakest part of his game. But if you have Eli White in left field, I think it makes more sense. I know that because they're throwing righties, everybody's going to say throw Verdugo out there. He's left-handed, get the platoon split. I get that, and that's not wrong. But I think I go the other way. I think I go defense heavy in left field and center field so that I can shade towards right field and help Acuna out a little bit.
And the last point that I'll make is this: when you talk about who's going to potentially start off there, this also is a series where Brian Snitker has to be at the top of his game. For instance, if you put Eli White out there, then you potentially have Drake Baldwin or Shawn Murphy as a bench option, plus Alex Verdugo. You could utilize those guys in games. Brian Snitker, he's capable of doing it. Now, doing it consistently, I completely understand anybody that questions him being able to do it consistently. But he has the potential of being able to make the right decisions, especially when he's looking aggressive to win. That's another key in this series. Brian Snitker is going to have to make the right decisions consistently. Who and when to use bullpen pieces, what decisions will be there when it comes to who you need to bat at the plate late in games. He has got to hit the right buttons to get this series won, because if he does, that's added value. If he makes the right decisions, the Braves have the guys that can add value, but he's got to put them in the position to be able to add that value.
And by the way, we watched Orlando Arcia pinch run tonight. Orlando Arcia pinch ran tonight. Like I've said this before on the show, like I don't understand Orlando Arcia as a bench option because he's not good enough to hit. He's not good enough to be a pinch hitter. He's not fast enough to be a pinch runner. You're never going to take Nick Allen out for defensive purposes anyways. And if something happened to Nick Allen, Eli White or Luke Williams could cover shortstop in an emergency until you brought somebody up the next day. I don't understand Orlando Arcia's roster spot is basically the thesis of this comment. And watching him pinch run tonight was hysterical. I don't know. I don't think Orlando Arcia is faster than Marcell Ozuna, by the way. And I know it didn't end up mattering because the Braves didn't score and the Nationals scored the next inning, but like, whatever the difference between Orlando Arcia's speed is and Marcell Ozuna's speed is certainly not enough to justify potentially losing out on another Marcell Ozuna at bat if it had gotten to that point. That was just mind-numbingly stupid. And part of it is because Orlando Arcia has no business being on a major league bench. He does not provide anything. And tonight was just a perfect example. So I know it's a small thing. It's the bench, whatever, but I had to get that. Watching Orlando Arcia pinch run, that the last two innings of that game tonight were hard to watch. I'll leave it at that. Acuña's coming back. We're going to end on a positive. The game was very frustrating. Orlando Arcia pinch ran. I'm done.
Let's end on one more positive, Stephen, and it's not exact for when Memorial Day comes each year. But I just want to point out the fact that we have seen this script before, okay? As frustrating and as painful at times as the past year has been, basically since April 27th of last year, added with a month later, Ronald Acuna Jr. going down. Keep this in mind. To go along with the fact that Ronald Acuna Jr. is back, keep this one thing in mind. Since 2019, in full seasons, not counting 2020, but since 2019, I basically looked at how the Braves have done from game number 55. I think they're what? They played their 55th game tonight or something like that. But from game 55 through the end of the season, here's the Braves record by year. 2019, 65-41, a 62% winning percentage. 2021, 62-45, a 57 winning percentage. 2022, 74-34, a 685 winning percentage. 2023, 72-36, a 667 winning percentage. And last year, 58-50, a 537 winning percentage. I know that's a lot of numbers, but what the point is saying is this, and I brought this point up before. During the Alex Anthopoulos era, this season is following a similar script that many other seasons have before. This team typically plays 500 ball for April and for much of May. And then when it comes to June, they take off. It comes from things happening where they get sparks to the team, like Michael Harris and Spencer Strider a few years ago, Ronald Acuna Jr. this year. As Stephen has said many times, Austin Riley turns into Barry Bonds. You get a mid-July to August hot streak from Matt Olson. The best days of this season for the Braves are very likely to be ahead of them, but it's got to start now. So yes, it's been a struggle, but when it comes to the combination of Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back, plus we've seen this story before, and we're getting to the best chapters usually when it comes to the regular season story of the Braves, keep those two things in mind as we look to kick the Padres' ass this weekend. Stephen, do you have anything else as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Kick the Padres' ass. I like it. I'm going to hashtag it if I can ever get back into my Twitter account. And stop pinch running Orlando Arcia.
Two takeaways from tonight. Of course, you can find Stephen Tolbert at _outliers, one of the best when it comes to covering the Braves. Myself at StatsSAC on Twitter/X. Hammer Territory across all forms of social media. Check us out on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Listen, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell the mailman, tell the random person that you meet over the weekend if you're out of town. Subscribe to Hammer Territory, also the Foul Territory family of podcasts. For Stephen Tolbert, until next time, my name is Shawn Coleman. Go Braves. Ronald Acuna Jr. is back in a Braves uniform, and there's going to be plenty of wins ahead for this Braves team, and we'll be here to cover it all on the Hammer Territory podcast.